So thank you all for being here. It's actually really phenomenal to see all of your faces and catch up quickly, briefly now, but hopefully we'll hear more from you. I know Aris and Lena are, even more delighted because they've spent time with you in person, that I haven't had the privilege to spend as much time with many of you. But it's just an amazing roster of participants here, like an all-star team here. So it's brilliant that you guys are all here. You know it already, but community engagement is a really important part of the organization and what we do. In fact, it's so important that it actually sheds light to all the things that we do, no matter what the skills that we're working on or what we are doing training on. A community engagement element is always part of these skills, be it fundraising or strategic planning. We will still be talking about local communities. So it's actually really brilliant to have a lot of illuminaries from past years to join our team this year. But thank you very much all for being here. And if your connection is not that great, I see Lillian's connection just kicked her out. That doesn't matter because there will be a recording for you to follow up later. But I'm very much looking forward to kind of listening to what you guys are doing and what you're working on, and see you participate again, and see the team this year. So I'm very thankful that you guys made the time to come and prepare and participate. So many thanks in advance, and many thanks to Lena and Aris that have been running the school for so many years, to have created and participated in the making of great illuminaries. And many thanks to Fotini, Iris, Athena, Selina, who are making this happen again and again. So I think we are all a great team, and we are all kind of participating equally in this team. So now we want your thought leadership. We want your participation in this, your active participation in this. Your case studies, your thinking, your experiments are really important for what the organization is doing, and you're very much part of that. So we are delighted to be in your company and delighted to kind of hear what you have to say and how you're going to engage. It doesn't matter if you don't have that much to say. It matters if you do, but it doesn't matter if you don't, because you may not have had a fantastic case study yet, but you will. And so we will keep engaging, and we will keep the meetings going. So hopefully we will be doing this every year, so that we have a point of reference to be coming back and share our experiences, our questions, our challenges, and our ideas. So I'm shutting up now because I want to listen, and I don't know who is going to talk next, but Fotini can manage the meeting, so I will shut up and listen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evangelos. I think that Lena and Aris would like to say a few words about the summer school program. And welcome.
Yes. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to see you all again, once more, online. it reminds me a little bit of the COVID times, to be honest. So I would much prefer to have you all in person, but we can think about organizing something like this in the 25th anniversary of the summer school. So it's already been 11 years. This year is the 11th year that the summer school is running. The first summer school was back in 2014. I still remember the day when Vangelis came and said, do you want to run summer school in Rognes, in Crete? And I said yes, but secretly I was thinking this guy must be crazy. 11 years down the line, I still think Vangelis is crazy. But it was a crazy idea that went really well, I think, and we've met so many fantastic people. The people from this year included as well. You can see them in the background, and maybe they will share some of their ideas with us later on. And as part of, I just wanted to say that this is a summer school we're doing that has gone through many different, let's say, phases. It began as a really small summer school in a very remote village in Crete. Afterwards, it went fully online due to COVID. You'll remember that. We had like 3 years sat on a chair trying to do a emulation of a summer school, and then finally, after COVID ended, we relocated to the island of Paros, where we are broadcasting from now. This year's summer school was 3 week long, a 3 week long summer school. It was 1 week online and the other 2 in person in Paros. We had a fantastic group of people joining us. Chifundo is here, hello. All right, and we're hoping to go on having doing workshops like this and engaging communities in person in the places we're doing this, because that's the idea of the whole summer school. It's first of all a node for people to come and visit and exchange knowledge and learn how to do community engagement the hard way, which is in the field with real people. And the other part of it is that through the summer school, we are forging our own collaborations with local stakeholders, local communities who are active in preserving, highlighting, and protecting cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible, in Greece. But today, this is our other aspect of the summer school. We're waiting to hear from your case studies. These are international in scope, and we're really looking forward to that. So without further ado, I think I forgot half of the things I wanted to say, but I'm sure you get the gist. So Lena.
Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. I'm very happy to see you again. I know some of us follow each other on social media, etc., but it's very different. So as Ari said, it's the 11th year of the summer school, but we still remembered now to celebrate the 10th anniversary, but it's never too late. So this year we have a fantastic team of students, as to be honest, every year, I guess. They did really good works, which they will present afterwards. At 8 o'clock, we're expecting, hopefully, people from the local public of Paros, the place we are, to attend the presentations of all 3 teams that have done research for these past weeks on the island. So I would like now to introduce our keynote speaker, and our beloved former student, Claudia Uribe. And, it's been a pleasure collaborating with Claudia. She's an archaeologist, and she's done her PhD in Japan, focusing on public archaeology and heritage studies. Ever since we've met in conferences and also here we're today in this alumni meeting. So Claudia is teaching both at undergraduate and postgraduate level. She works on participatory heritage policies, but also pre-Hispanic technologies, as she's now back in Peru. And she's interested in social aspects of archaeology in the past. So in her research, she combines anthropological, historical, and interdisciplinary approaches to explore the ethics and politics of archaeology. And also she's looking into how communities and states negotiate the meanings and the uses of the past. So she will be our keynote speaker and also our coordinator today. So Claudia, thank you very much for accepting to do that. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lena, Aris, and Evangelos and Fotini. It's truly a pleasure to be part of this conference. It's actually like a regathering after years. Actually, being part of the summer school back in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, was truly was like a historical mark in my academic life. I learned a lot about community engagement, and that truly shaped also my approach in public archaeology and also in heritage studies. So it's truly a pleasure and an honor to open this session. And I know the conference will bring together critical and inspiring work from across regions and disciplines, all inspired by the summer school and united as well by a shared commitment to community-centered and community engagement approaches in cultural heritage. So I will begin with my presentation. Let me share my screen. Are you able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. 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 Thank you very much. So I will start now the presentation. In this opportunity, I'll talk about an initiative that was inspired by the summer school in engaging communities for cultural heritage, where I took part in 2020. This is an undergraduate course that I've been developing in the Catholic University of Peru in Lima. It's been about trying to build connections with archaeological sites in the urban landscape of Lima City, the capital city of Peru. I would try to explain first the context of Lima and the origin of the course in 2023 when I returned to Peru after finishing my graduate studies in Japan. And the objective was to find ways of engaging our university's youngest community for cultural heritage. And after 2.5 years, the results on community engagement are interesting, because we were able to see that students found meaningful connections with cultural heritage in Lima. And these heritage or archaeological sites are usually invisible and not necessarily well known, even in educational textbooks or in the narratives that are taught in schools. Okay, so first about the millenary history of the Central Coast where Lima is located. This region reveals a series of layers of cultural expressions since the arrival of the first human populations to the Andes 14,000 years ago. The valley in the arid coast of Peru were transformed into highly productive lands by optimizing the use of water from the rivers. And this led to socioeconomic and political systems that developed earthen monumental architecture and agricultural landscapes. The high buildings reflect generations of collective work and community bonds. But after the colonization from the Spanish kingdom in the 16th century, the disruption of indigenous worldviews left these places to abandonment, subject to destruction and oblivion. And therefore, it also nullified the relationships with communities. So nowadays, these sites are popularly known as Huacas. There are around 500 pre-colonial sites spread in the area of Lima. These sites are often unrecognized, unprotected, and sometimes unwanted. For most residents, they are invisible, irrelevant, or seen as obstacle for development. There are no surrounding or local communities today that actually claim direct ancestral ties to them, although recently there are many grassroots organizations that have been mobilizing initiatives to build meaningful connections with these sites. It was in this context that the course Huacas and Museums of Lima was relaunched in 2023, shortly after the return to in-person education at the university. This was in a post-pandemic context. Our goal was to engage a new generation of university students with Lima hidden heritage. We were keen to answer a couple of questions at least. How can we recover the value from what has been overlooked? And how do we create meaningful engagement with a fragmented past, like the pre-colonial past in Lima? So Huacas can be found in the most unexpected places, tucked between high-rise buildings, as we see in the picture, along busy avenues, or on the edges of informal settlements. But rather than being recognized as cultural anchors, they are often viewed with indifference and even hostility. They are rarely part of school curricula, public discourse, or even civic identity. And this indifference has consequences. When people are unaware of the history beneath their feet, they are less likely to defend it. And yet there is an enormous potential in these places, and not only as archaeological sites, but as spaces of memory, dialogue, and also transformation in a fragmented country nowadays. At the university level, and from the archaeology program at the Catholic University, we felt a responsibility to respond. And the course, Huacas and Museums of Lima, was designed to not only teach students about heritage and archaeology, but also help them experience it. It sought to reconnect students, many of whom had spent years isolated and confined during the pandemic, with their city and the layered history. We wanted them basically to experience heritage, to walk, to observe, to reflect and engage, to ask questions about what kind of city they live in and what kind of past is resting upon and what kind of future they want to build. This course drew inspiration from various sources. From archaeologist Michael Shanks, I borrowed the ideas of experiencing the past and cultivating the archaeological imagination, encouraging students to see heritage not as static, but as lived and interpretive. And from the Making Heritage Together approach developed by our professors in the summer school, Aris, Lena, and Evangelos, we emphasized that heritage is not a fixed legacy, but it's a continuing dialogue about meaning and value. So this was a pilot course that aimed first at first and second year students in humanities and social sciences. It was open to students with no prior training in archaeology, and the course invited them to reflect critically on the history, the condition, and the value of Lima Lima's Huacas and museums. So it combined practical exploration with academic research with one key objective, that was to empower students to recognize and articulate the value of local heritage in everyday environments. The methodology of the course has been to visit archaeological sites in Lima every week. So the field visits became a central space for pedagogy. On site, we walk through the ruins, the archaeological sites, follow the historical traces, discussed the changing uses of the space over time, and listen to guides, to each other, and to also the place itself. Students were asked to document their experiences in writing, photographs, and also drawings. And they also participated in many group discussions that encourage critical thinking about how we see heritage in contemporary urban life, how the pre-colonial history is providing us many insights to reflect on the current society in Peru as well. So over time, we were able to notice some patterns in the students' reflections, as we were able to see in their assignments and also in the conversations during the field visits. At least in this presentation, I would like to share 3 key insights that emerged in the past 2 years. And first is the city's temporal depth that was truly eye-opening. Many students expressed surprise that Lima had a history far older than 500 years. Lima, which was founded as the capital city of the Spanish colonial power in the 16th century, has been popularly commemorated as the city of the kings, and history texts highlight or even romanticize the colonial past. And for some students, this was the first time they encountered narratives that were beyond the colonial or the Republican history. This is why when we were visiting Huacas, they spoke of a kind of time travel, of touching a past that they didn't know existed in Lima. And they commonly express as well a sense of surprise that came from experiencing the materiality of ancient cultures in earthen architecture and thousands of objects that were contained in collections of museums. And in contrast with the modernity of the city that was always populated by high-rise buildings of concrete and not necessarily having a connection with the natural landscape. And second, many students were also moved by the sense of loss. They admired the past capacity for collective action, particularly because pre-colonial societies relied a lot on collective work and community work to transform harsh desertic landscape through cooperation and also different technologies that were developed collectively. And in contrast, they noted how today's society often celebrates individualism and also short-term gain. And this contrast became particularly poignant in the aftermath of the pandemic, when feelings of disconnection and fragmentation were still very fresh. So this picture actually captures that moment when students were seeing the archaeological landscape and reflecting how much we have changed as well as human beings and as a society. And third, the students also began to revalue ancestral knowledge and cultures, because they saw that Huacas not only were archaeological remains, but they were also evidence of indigenous wisdom and resilience. And this was a very touching moment because it led to a deeper conversation about identity, discrimination in our country, and the continued marginalization of indigenous cultures in Peru. And several students who are first or second generation of migrant families in Lima became very personal in their experiences, and they share that their grandparents speak Quechua, which is a native language in Peru, but that the language has been silenced in their families to avoid the discrimination or the stigmatization in the city of Lima. So for them, visiting Huacas and engaging with the narrative of indigenous societies was a way of recovering a connection that had been suppressed. And of course, finding that the millenary indigenous history can teach us how to revalue our ancestral roots and cultures nowadays. So this was actually a very emotional and sentimental visit. The picture is trying to capture that moment when the guide was explaining how in this archaeological site, local communities actually find a way of connecting with their ancestral roots. And this is not necessarily tied to the archaeological narrative. It's just that valuing indigenous cultures from 1,000 years ago actually allow us to value also indigenous cultures in the present. So it was a very inspiring moment when this happened a year ago. And this is another picture where we were visiting a shell midden actually in the southern area of Lima. And this is a very important archaeological site that has been progressively threatened by urban development, but now the local municipality is trying to recover the site. So they actually requested us, the course, to visit the site to try to understand the local history and also to invite students to reflect about how we can revalue this kind of evidences. Because in Lima, in the central area, it's common to see monumental archaeological sites, but in this case, it's just a shell midden with no structure in the surface. So it was interesting to try to think what we can value from this site. And the reflections that came out during this moment was that, well, we are seeing the heritage of modern fishermen because this place is very close to the sea and very close to the seashore, where we see every day communities of fishermen doing their work, after which, of course, we are able to get fish from the market and be able to consume the different dishes of the Peruvian gastronomy, like ceviche. So basically, thanks to the fishermen and thanks to this ancestral culture of fishing, we are able to access to all these riches and all this wonderful food that we have in the coastal areas. So that was actually a way of truly connecting with a narrative that has emotional meanings and also that allows us to value different narratives that are often marginalized in heritage and also in archaeology in Peru. And when this is another picture of a reflection that we were having in an interpretation center in an archaeological site that has some replicas of the pottery of ancient cultures in Lima. And thanks to the fact that we had the replicas, actually students were able to see and touch these objects and try to think the amount of knowledge that was necessary to be able to produce these kind of objects in the past. And also how perhaps gathering in a place like the Huaca for communities in ancient life was so important and how we should be able to recover that kind of community sense in contemporary life. So in conclusion, this course offers students a powerful embodied experience of heritage through weekly encounters with Lima pre-colonial sites. They discovered different layers of history that had been hidden from view. And more importantly, they began to question dominant narratives and recognize their own place in shaping cultural memory. They connected with the values of resilience, creativity, and community that are embedded in the ancient landscapes of the city. For many students, this was not just a class, but it was also a personal journey, a journey of rediscovery, of belonging, and also awakening to the responsibilities of citizenship in a pluricultural society. So the experience affirms something simple yet profound, that meaningful engagement with heritage begins with presence and with experience, with curiosity, with openness to listen. Even in a city that is fast paced and fragmented like Lima, the past is not lost. It's here with us, waiting to be seen and also to be reimagined. And this is all my presentation, and thank you very much for listening. Okay.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you. I hope that I am okay with the time management.
You're perfect. It's fantastic what you designed. I really wish we had heritage and community engagement courses in the academic curriculums here in Greece. So if you need us as guest lecturers, we are coming over.
Please, we will be really happy to collaborate and to have you at the Catholic University in Lima.
And you touched upon many issues, actually, even if it's in a different setting and different context. You touched upon many issues that we have been discussing here these past weeks. You know, such as how heritage is treated, neglect, heritage values, meaningful engagement, also issues of development, etc. So I think, you know, it was a very interesting paper. Ari, do you want to say?
I'll save my comments for the
Okay.
end, because I think we need to go on with the presentations. If
Yeah.
Claudia is going to coordinate the whole conference as well. So there will be presentations followed by short remarks by Claudia. And then we will take questions in the end. So during the presentations, you can also write your questions in the chat box so that we can collect them all and have a discussion in the end. Okay.
And of course, we can ask live questions, right?
Perfect.
And we can get questions from the
Yeah.
participants here.
Okay.
So press forward.
Thank you. I'll put us
Thank
on
you
mute.
very much. Okay, thank you very much. Now we will start with the first block of presentations. We would like to invite Barbara Anglisz, who will present the value of community-centered qualitative research approaches in Madaba, Jordan, MRAMP, I think, Stakeholder Research Project.
Mramp.
Mramp. Okay, perfect. So thank you, Barbara, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm I guess a veteran from the program in 2022 is when I attended. I was sort of a little after as COVID was wrapping up, but I had the opportunity to attend the course online, and it was in a fabulous 2 weeks. I had an amazing time. And now I've been doing a couple of qualitative research projects. I'd like to talk to you about my most recent one. And should I give a couple of sentences of my background? I didn't send you my bio. I could say a few words. Is that okay? Or should I just get started?
Sure.
I'm sorry?
Yes,
Well,
sure. Please go on, Barbara.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this is going to work. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Yes?
Perfect.
Good? Okay. Okay. All right. So let me get started here. So this is a project that I'll talk a little bit that I did in 2023 in Madaba, Jordan. So to give a little bit of a background of what is Mramp, Mramp stands for the Madaba Regional Archaeological Museum. Mramp is a proposed museum to be located in the historic district of Madaba, Jordan, about 20 kilometers south of Amman. Madaba is renowned as a city of mosaics and is a popular tourist attraction. A group of collaborators are envisioning the development of a state-of-the-art regional museum featuring interpretive displays and artifact galleries from Madaba and the surrounding region. And what you see over here is this is one of the brochures. That's sort of like the 3D model of what the museum is going to look like that is kind of incorporated into a landscape. And over here is the existing archaeological site called the Burnt Palace. And this is where they're proposing to develop the museum in the center of the historic district of Madaba. So my background, the background of the field research in Madaba. So in October 2023, the Mramp Stakeholder Qualitative Research Project took place in Madaba on behalf of the Mramp leadership teams of co-directors and a small working group. I was a principal investigator conducting interviews with a variety of stakeholders, including Madaba residents and small businesses, staff, heritage organizations, government officials, tourism industry representatives, and academic institutions. Over 20 Mramp stakeholder participants viewed a 5-minute 3D concept design video of the proposed museum based on the plans developed by Mramp and Studio Strati in Italy. The participants were asked a series of questions to gather their insights, feedback, concerns, and recommendations regarding the museum's location, galleries, and design. They also were questions about their perceptions on the value of the museum to the Madaba community and the potential use of the museum space for local events and community activities. In addition to the research, I helped develop a custom database that was developed to input verbatim transcripts for the museum's decision makers to generate unique reports on the participant responses. I will talk about this software application in more detail on a few screens. My field research employed a community-centered methodology, engaging directly with the community and local residents through a grassroots approach to gather insights and information. The research objectives, like what was the purpose of this project? This is something that I am a consultant for Mramp, and I proposed this project because I thought it was very, very important to do outreach with the local community, the Mramp staff. They have a smaller museum and they're planning on expanding that. But nobody, like the decision makers, were talking with the stakeholders, but there wasn't a concentrated effort in terms of gathering everyone's thoughts around what this museum means to them and feedback on a lot of elements. So I went out to the community and asked these questions. So the objective was, in accordance to Mramp's mission to champion and incorporate heritage-driven community archaeology approaches into the museum's strategic plans, the research ensures that the input and involvement from the local community plays an integral part of the museum development planning process. As well, this online database is, and I'll talk a little bit about that, it basically helps the decision makers actually gather their data, not sort of through a report, which is summarized, but actually read what people were saying, exactly how it was in the transcripts. So when this will allow them to basically, if they have any specific questions about, some of the feedback to certain questions, they'll be able to incorporate their feedback and recommendations to identify productive actions, prioritize tasks, improve the museum design, construction and strategic plans, and straighten community relations. And basically the report is to ensure that the new museum is supported and endorsed by the local community. That was my biggest objective of creating this research. And the research was divided into 5 main themes, and the themes were questions that were centered around their stakeholders' role, of the museum, like what do they plan on doing during the planning and the development and once the museum has been established. Feedback on the 3D video in terms of what they thought was the renderings and the content that they had about the location, the galleries, the content and the narratives. Also, the questions were asked around what is their vision for this museum that's going to be part of an integral part of their community, and why or why not should this museum be established in Madaba. And also questions were asked about suggestions on how the community and tourists will use the museum once it's built and the potential benefits it could bring to the community. And lastly, it's about, ideas, their ideas, how they're going to promote to tourism and bring awareness of the museum to the local community, as well as all the tourists that go there. So here's just a brief description about the database. So what this was is a portal where I would log in and I would put categories. I would, here would be each participant was given a number. They would be a number that I only knew, so it masked their identity. There was also categories, whether they were heritage professionals, whether they were local participants, staff members, anything like that. So they're put into a category. They were divided into subjects, and then one question would be like one category, a subject would have multiple questions. And like, for example, in this one is why does the Madaba need a new museum? Then it would be, I would cut and paste their responses into the response location. And I started to build a database of thousands of different feedback and responses. So that basically when a user comes into and uses this application, what I ends up building is all these categories. So a user can go in, like for example, a co-director or a decision maker wants to improve a certain element and get feedback. They could either select one of these, multiple, or a majority of these questions and basically create a report. And this report basically looks like this. They can download it and they have, a whole category of these responses. And this is what a report looks like. It tells you who the stakeholder category is, what was the main category or subject matter. And then that would basically, they could actually read and read the transcripts if that's something that they wanted to get more detail. If they had extra questions, I could actually go back and find where this particular subject was within the transcripts. So the research findings and reflections. So the by doing because of the research adopted a community-centered approach, I got a lot of valuable feedback from the local community, and some of the feedback was that they really appreciated that they were being asked these questions and become part of, the overall design of this museum. And according to the participants, these were stakeholders that were knowledgeable about and involved in the development of this museum. They said it was needed. It will provide economic benefits, and they will receive support, except the interesting thing is that these stakeholder participants were pre-planned. I had appointments with them and I went to their offices or they came to a location to conduct the interview. But one of the other stakeholders who knows the community and the neighborhood very well took me and introduced me to people that were like local businesses, other heritage professionals and other buildings and vendors. And the interesting thing is when I started talking to them, they knew nothing about this museum and they became very concerned about, are they going to tear down their street where they're going to build this? Because they were really surprised at the size and scale of this museum. And I had to assure them there was not. And they had a lot of concerns. And I brought this to the attention to the co-directors that there is some confusion and there is not a lot of information because the decision makers of the museum haven't done an outreach to the community. So they were, the community was happy. They were pleased that I was able to ask them questions, and I brought their concerns to the attention of the decision makers. Other findings is that the participants really emphasized the importance of representing their city's history in the museum galleries. In the 3D video, that wasn't evident, and they all basically, any person that lived in Madaba said you have to have a gallery located to their own history. There are also Christian participants who wanted to make sure that the museum would showcase that Madaba was a thriving Christian community. And they also provided valuable suggestions of the museum public areas and for activities and events. And they were very excited about that prospect. And also skeptical stakeholders, like the people who were not included in the original design and didn't have any outreach, they expressed doubts about the museum's benefits and the value, seeing it as a top-down project without community input. And while the majority of stakeholders agreed that the overall strategic plan for the museum, they agreed to that, but I was able to capture opinions that didn't quite agree, and they had other suggestions, which I thought was interesting, that they had found a venue to be able to express their opinions. And using the value of community-centered research for engaging communities, the findings were that the research highlighted the importance of community involvement in all aspects of the museum planning and development, that participants are familiar with the proposed museum insisted that the neighborhood be kept informed with regular communication, and that they were not excluded from the museum planning process. And also that gaining local community is crucial. Involving the community is crucial for gaining their support and acceptance for the museum, especially to see the Madaba history represented. And one of the skeptical participants basically said, before you make buildings, the project should be about people first. Invest in people, then invest in the place. The community does not understand why Mramp is doing this, and you need to educate the community. The people need to feel the benefits of tourism. And when I was getting feedback like this in my research, I found it very interesting that there's a whole other element of participants and other stakeholders that were not originally involved in the design, or at least knowledgeable of it. And this became a crucial point that I outlined to the museum decision makers. And based on the findings, I created a report, and the report recommendations basically came out to these 4 points. One is that more research is required to evaluate the benefits, the potential effects of the museum on the community, the business and tourism. So they still need to do a lot more different impact studies. Enhance community engagement is keep the community informed about the project developments and seek their feedback to transform the museum into a valued civic cultural hub. Showcase Madaba history is to highlight Madaba's history, legacy, and cultural identity in the museum's galleries, and raise awareness and promotion strategies for the museum is to implement educational programs, community task force, tour group initiatives, and also to video document the construction process. So that would mean from the start to the end, to sort of keep like weekly updates and create a video for that. And collaborate with local research facilitators to engage a wider Madaba community through expanded research initiatives. So that is basically the results of what the directors and the decision makers of the museum felt like, that there is a starting point for a larger initiative to go out with the community and get much more feedback. And it will also be an education process where people will go out and tell them about this museum, and people have a venue and a forum to be able to express their opinions and find out more information about the museum, but also see if this is something that they would value But I think the most important thing is to be able to get information out there about the museum that they're proposing, and I'm working on publishing the report findings. As a update, this was almost 2 years ago. They are still the group of Mramp co-directors are still looking for funding. So the museum's still in the planning process, but they're very hopeful that they'll be able to break ground in about a year or so once the funding is taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for your very, very interesting presentation and research project as well, because it has demonstrated that community engagement can be actually integrated into both research and policy making. So yeah, in a very creative way, right? Because you were presenting about this database online that will help decision making, and your research, a qualitative research, is actually trying to incorporate local communities' perspectives and also listening to their concerns. So they will be taken into account in the design and planning of this museum proposal. So at the end, it's actually beneficial for both local communities who will understand better the project of the museum, and for the museum as well, because it will have a policy that will integrate and will be sensitive also to the community's interest. And it's also very nice to see that this is a culturally diverse landscape or context, right? Because you were also mentioning that Christian communities also want their history to be showcased in the museum. So actually, this research that you are conducting and applying with very interesting digital tools will help to reflect this diversity of history and perhaps overcome issues of marginalization or discrimination as well. So I think it's a very, very nice proposal, and thank you for sharing your results. We will have a space for comments and also questions at the end of this block. And given that you were commenting about the use of digital technologies, digital tools to find ways to engage communities, in the same spirit, now we will invite the next presentation. And thank you again, Barbara, for this brilliant contribution. And we will invite, thank you. We will invite now Syrine Souissi, who is teaching at the Sorbonne University in Paris, France. She's a PhD student in the University of Sousse in Tunisia. Her presentation is titled "The Contribution of Information and Communication Technologies to Community Engagement in Heritage Landscape Studies." So, Syrine,
hello, everyone.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be here with you again. I was participating in the summer school of 2021, and it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot in that summer school, and I'm very glad to be here with you again and share some results about my PhD project. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my presentation?
Can you put it in full screen? Yes, perfect. Yes, Syrine.
Okay. So hello again. I'm Syrine Souissi. I'm a senior year PhD student at Sorbonne University and University of Sousse under joint thesis supervision. And I'm also a contract teacher at Sorbonne University. Today I'm going to present a part of my PhD project which focuses on community engagement. In fact, I'm working on a PhD topic that focuses on heritage landscapes in the southern Mediterranean shore, and their valorization through technological innovation. I have to access the geospatial analysis with remote sensing and satellite image processing. And the second one is the integration of information and communication technologies to deal with social field surveys. So my presentation is entitled The Contribution of Information and Communication Technologies to Community Engagement in Heritage Landscape Studies, Field Survey Analysis with Natural Language Processing, commonly known as NLP. To start with, I'm going to speak about the digital tools and cultural heritage. In fact, when we're speaking about digital heritage, we have different meanings. First of all, we can speak about the born digital content, that is the subject of the UNESCO Charter on the Preservation of Digital Heritage, which was published in 2009. So this charter defines the digital materials as text databases that are still and moving images, audio, graphics, software, and web pages among a wide and growing range of formats. And the main goal of this charter is to put emphasis on long-term accessibility, the digital rights, and the institutional responsibility. We also can speak about the digital representations of tangible heritage, which is the documentation, conservation, education, and virtual access. For example, through 3D modeling with the photogrammetry and laser scanning. Here I'm representing work that I've already did on the historic building of an historic building in Brussels using photogrammetry and laser scanning. And also we can speak about geospatial tools as digital tools for heritage preservation or geographic information systems known as GIS for spatial understanding and management of heritage. In fact, the UNESCO recommendations on the historic urban landscape that were published in 2011 focused on the spatial dimension of heritage. So in its article 5 about research and engagement, it states that it is essential to document the state of urban areas and their evolution to facilitate the evaluation of proposals for change and to improve protective and managerial skills and procedures. And it encourages the use of information and communication technologies to document, understand, and present the complex layering of urban areas and their constituent components. Also in 2023, the UNESCO launched the initiative of the World Heritage Online Map Platform that supports the spatial analysis, mapping, and monitoring heritage sites by submitting geopolygons with the precise location of the World Heritage sites. Among all this field of digital tools, there is the recent technique, the AI-based recent technique, which is the natural language processing, or NLP. It is a subfield of artificial intelligence and a branch of communication and information technology that uses machine learning models to enable computers to interpret, understand, and generate a human language. So NLP is widely used in these recent years in the heritage field, whether for heritage documentation, for cultural knowledge, chatbots for cultural preservation and revitalization of indigenous and endangered languages, or populate cultural heritage ontologies. But most importantly, which is our main focus today, it is used in engaging communities in the heritage research field, such as community-generated digital heritage, public voices of social media in heritage management, visitors' experience in heritage sites, aesthetic value of heritage sites, or social representations of heritage landscape, which is the main focus of my presentation today. So my study case is the Sfax city center and the Kerkena archipelago. There are two Mediterranean zones in Tunisia, two connected zones, but with different landscapes. We have the urban landscape in Sfax city center and the natural landscape in the Kerkena archipelago. In fact, Sfax city center is recognized as an historic urban landscape with the after a reflection meeting on 2013 with the National Heritage Institute in Tunisia and the UNESCO. It has two main components: the Medina, which is on the indicative list of the UNESCO since 2012, and the European city from the colonial era, which the registration project is currently being studied. The Kerkena archipelago is a coastal landscape with high cultural value recognized in the Landscape Atlas of Tunisia. It has three main landscape elements, which are the sharfia or the fixed fisheries that are registered on the World Heritage List since 2020. The palm groves that are on the World Heritage List since 2019 in the frame of the Arab Initiative, and the wetlands, which are locally called Sebha, they are registered as a Ramsar site since 2012. So these are the main sites that we will be studying through the social field survey. So for the field survey, we use the stratified sampling, which is a probability random sampling that divides the population into subgroups called strata to obtain a representative sample with low cost. Stratified sampling method is used in heritage research to study mixed reality technology effects, for example, visitor experience in World Heritage sites, and also heritage representations. So the calendar of field work was divided as shown in this table. July, August, we conducted the field survey in the Kerkena archipelago or Kerkena Islands because it's the summer season and there is the coexistence of temporary and permanent populations. September, October, we conducted the field survey in the city center of Sfax because it's the start of the school year and there is an increase in local commercial activity. November, we moved to the archipelago, sorry, that was written wrong. So November in the archipelago, because it's the olive season and there is intense local agricultural activity. In December, we were in the city center of Sfax because it's the New Year's period, where is more commercial activity. In total, we've got the 114 respondents to process with the NLP. So for the sampling, for the questions, we have these main questions. What is in yellow are questions about the Sfax city center. What's in green, it's about the Kerkena archipelago. What's in blue, questions about social characteristics. So today what I'm going to focus about is the exploratory text analysis. We have questions like, what does the Medina mean to you? What does the European city mean to you? And what does the wetlands mean to you? What do the palm groves mean to you? And what the fixed fisheries mean to you? This mainly to have information about the perceptions of heritage landscapes. We also asked the questions about what are the benefits of the fixed fisheries compared to other fishing techniques, what are the benefits of the wetland, and what are the byproducts of the palm groves that you use in your daily life to highlight the usage and benefits of heritage landscape elements. Questions like what animals do you...
Syrine, I'm so sorry to interrupt. It's just 2 minutes left for your presentation.
Okay, so I'm going to move forward. So these are the questions. I'm not going to cite them in details. To process these questions, we already have the raw text data in CSV format. We did some standard data cleaning and processing with the NLP, which is removing the stop words, the lowercase, and standardized profession labels. We have here AB, the before and after data. And we use the representations such as cloud of words and histograms. We will integrate the geographical information with text data. We built the geographic information system with the questions, what is your favorite place in the Medina and what is your favorite place in the European city? And we represented answers with geographic information as point, using volume library in Python to have a web map. So here I'm going to present the results. We have the results in French, so I'm going to explain them quickly in English. So for the cloud points about social representations in the European city and the Medina, we have two common words, which are patrimoine, histoire here, that means heritage and history. So both parts of the city are recognized as heritage and history, but for example, we can see in the European city, colonization is more dominant, but the word fax is dominant in the Medina, which means that the local population is attached or identifies the Medina as part of Sfax more than the European city because it's from the colonial era. We have also questions about the vegetation species. We see that two main vegetation species are mentioned, which are the ficus and the palms, that are the alignment trees in the city, but they didn't mention other species related to the urban green spaces. And when we see here as an answer to the question, do you go to the urban green spaces, we see that a big part of the population do not visit the urban green spaces. And also a big part of the population said that the state of the urban green spaces is very bad. So which explains why the perception towards green spaces is mostly focused on the alignment trees rather than species in the urban green space itself. For the Kirkena archipelago, social representations of the palm groves and the wetlands, we can see that the palm groves have words like heritage, Kirkena, the name of the archipelago, life, source of life, the beautiful landscape. However, the wetlands are associated to words like souvenirs, childhood, nostalgic, etc. So the wetlands represent mostly the past to people, but they are not attached to it currently, but most of the words related to heritage are common in the cloud word of the palm grove. So I'm going to move forward very quickly. So for the fixed fisheries, we have the same word of cloud with words like landscape, palm trees. It's also very frequent in the cloud of words. There is a lot of words related to beautiful landscape, wonderful landscape, etc., which highlights the landscape importance of this heritage element. And related to the question, do you appreciate the fixed fisheries? Most of the population said yes. For the byproducts, usage and utilities, we can see that there are many usages of these landscape elements. For the palm grove, I put here some photos. They use it to build some extensions to their houses. They use it in decorations, etc. And here I will present quickly the map. Sorry. So this is the map. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the spots that were mentioned by the local population in the European city and in the Medina. So this is the Medina, this is the European city, and this is the favorite places. The size of the circle highlights the frequency of the word. So the most mentioned places are the municipality. It was mentioned 25 times. There is here a very famous place. the mosque was mentioned the most in the Medina, so we tried to integrate the text information with the geospatial information to highlight the favorite places according to the local population. Just to conclude, this contribution forms part of a broader digitalization project of landscape heritage in Sfax City and Kirkina Archipelago. These are the preliminary results. It also supports the UNESCO text and initiatives on the heritage landscape preservation and community-based strategies. Methodologically speaking, NLP helped identify valued heritage elements and co-promote heritage landscapes with local communities. And thank you for your attention. I hope that I didn't take too much longer than expected.
Thank you very much, Syrine, for your interesting presentation. It's very nice to see the exploration of innovative methods and also technological tools like the communication technologies, as you were explaining, not only for finding ways to understand the perception of local communities and how they value heritage as well, but because this is also a way of expanding our own understanding of the heritage landscape, because we usually tend to think on historical urban landscapes as fully populated by buildings or historical places. But then in your results, we are actually seeing that local people value the palm trees and the nature, the seascape. So this is very revealing and very important, I think, to expand our notions of heritage. And as the previous presentation also showed us, this is very important to inform policy making as well. Okay, so I think, unfortunately, our next presenter,
Rabia will not be able to present.
Rabia Harrak, yes, she has been unable to join us today, but we will move on then to the next presentation by Harriet Chebet Ng'ok. Harriet is she is CEO founder of Harriet's Botanicals Limited. We welcome Harriet, and also just a quick and gentle reminder that each presentation is limited to 10 minutes, because this will help us stay on schedule and also ensure that everyone has time to share their work and also the final discussion. So welcome, Harriet. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Harriet Chebet Ng'ok, and I just wanted to share my screen. I'm not sure why it's doing this. Here it is. Give me a minute to get the from beginning. Okay, so I run a botanicals company in Kenya, and I'd like to talk about what's happening in the Rift Valley, the Southern Rift Valley, where I'm from. Just wanted to sort of touch base from when I last presented in a forum like this. So my presentation really is about botanical extracts in the Rift Valley, and we are a company that manufactures and retails traditional indigenous medicine for the urban African and diaspora market. We have a manufacturing facility that manufactures up to 2,000 bottles. We have 35 employees, 15 outlets, and retail through 34 outlets of a company known as Healthy You, the largest wellness company in Kenya. And we also retail in the diaspora, and I work with the community. So wanted to just say a little bit about what the Great Rift Valley is, because it extends through Kenya's diverse ecological zones, creating unique microclimates that support exceptional plant diversity. We're talking about 2,000 documented plant species, many of which possess bioactive compounds with commercial potential. Traditional communities, particularly the Maasai, have utilized these botanical resources for centuries, developing sophisticated knowledge systems around medicinal and functional plant applications. So we just talk about the diversity. We talk about plants like the yellow-barked acacia, the bitter apple, the Sodom apple, the African myrrh, and the rambling aloe. And these species have a local variation due to environmental pressures in the Rift Valley that have created unique chemotypes of otherwise common species. For instance, the Wabugia ugadensis, the East African green heart, Rift Valley specimens demonstrate higher concentrations of polygodial and other bioactive components. Now, current utilization, traditional use patterns, medicinal applications, 85% of households regularly use local plant extracts for healthcare, veterinary purposes, cosmetic and personal care, food preservation, and flavoring. However, current commercial botanical extract production in the region remains limited, with most activity concentrated around small-scale essential oil distillation for eucalyptus and lemongrass, informal medicinal plant trading, nascent aloe processing initiatives, limited export of raw materials to international buyers. So you're looking at less than 50 tons of processed botanical extracts, representing significant untapped potential given the available biomass and species diversity. So
Harriet,
if this,
Harriet,
yes.
Sorry, if you're changing slides, we can't see it. Ah, okay, all right, now it's
Yes.
changed.
I hadn't started changing the slides. I was just giving a
okay.
of a background.
Good,
So
this
is me and somebody else, the people who work for me actually in the work that we do. And behind me, you can see we have the community of women that we work with, not just women, but we work with 400 medicinal practitioners, as stated earlier. We have actually managed to do the bio-extraction of some of these plants. We use up to 50 plants, and that is a quality control. We actually keep the traditional names because we want to remind the community that these particular plants are actually medicine, and so that they should not be used for charcoal or used as firewood. Oh, that again is just to demonstrate the work that we have done in terms of modernizing this process. A bit more of that. And then from where we've come, let's say 5 years ago, where I just had one shop, actually I was processing from home, to now where we have 15 shops and where we're actually out in the market doing different things. Again, just to demonstrate we are now fully engaged, speaking to the community in Nairobi and out of Nairobi, talking about these different bioactive components. This just kind of shows you the potential. And then that we actually retail in HealthU, where you can see us with global brands over there, like some of these actually come from the UK. These are what our shops look like. This is one shop we have at the waterfront, and on the left is actually another shop that we have in a big mall called BBS. Again, just to demonstrate the capacity and what we have done. So if you look at these more steep chart, the ones in red and green, that's our product right next to another international product. And on the right is where we have a shop in where we have the Somali population. These are the botanical extracts I'm talking about. So this is us at the farm. You can see on the left that they look like what they look like, the bark, you know, the bark and the leaves and the roots. So when you look at the economic impact assessment, I'm just going to leave that page on there. Current botanical activities provide irregular income for approximately 2,400 individuals across the region. Household income contribution is 12 to 18% of household income in participating communities. Value chain analysis, most value addition occurs outside the region, with local communities capturing only 15 to 25% of final product value, which means there's a significant opportunity for local value addition and income enhancement. So the opportunities for development, high value extract opportunities, pharmaceutical intermediates. Several Rift Valley species produce compounds of pharmaceutical interest, including antimalarials and anti-inflammatory agents and novel antibiotics. Cosmetic ingredients, growing global demand for natural cosmetic ingredients. Nutraceuticals, functional food ingredients derived from traditional food plants. Aromatherapy and wellness, essential oils. The technology transfer potential, modern extraction technologies include supercritical CO2 extraction, ultrasonic extraction, membrane separation, spray drying. So just So you can kind of see what some of the botanicals look like. That's one of them, actually. We call it New Weight, that has a lot of bioactive components. This is now, I want to talk a little bit more about the community. These are some of the people that we work with. Those two are actually senior medicinal practitioners. And over there, we had gone to give them some of our branded merchandise. This is the impact we've had because we have 200 children in a holiday school that we work with every November. And the children are tasked with actually looking after the environment, and each of them has a particular tree. And then it's a feeding program as well, and where they get like extra tuition and lessons. And then in the afternoon, we can screen different movies or talk about why the children need to be the ones sort of in charge of making sure that this cultural heritage is passed on. These are the women again, are different communities. So we work with 3 communities, the Ogiek, the Maasai, and the Kipsigis. So these are the mamas who actually collect botanicals for us in the forest. We pay a premium. We pay $5 per kilo for botanical extracts. And then there's sustainable harvesting taking place, that they're not allowed to actually harvest the whole entire tree. And they harvest the bark judiciously so that they maintain the life of the tree. And only certain people who are in this craft are actually allowed to harvest the botanicals. Another section where we went to see these women as well, as we continue our community engagement. And there we had students and their lecturers came from all the way from California. These are people who are in the biology department and the biochemistry department. And they came to just see a little bit of the work that we are doing, and you can see what the environment there looks like. And finally, this is our latest project of our skincare. And you can see, again, we've actually maintained the names. Chebnyali is actually yellow-barked acacia. Tangoro twit is actually aloe vera. You have Nukiat, which is black cohosh. And then we've modernized it again. So we call it things like Tangoro twit eczema cleanser, or you have Tangoro twit acne serum, Nukiat healing balm. This is our latest project, right? So if you were back and see the impact, potentially that if more of this was done, it simply could be huge. I mean, we are almost at $1 million in revenue. And I think this is just from one company with 35 employees doing this. So my role really is to emphasize the potential of not just in the Rift Valley, but the whole of Kenya, and actually all over Africa. If we were to harness our botanical extracts and our botanical treasures with a business model that supports the environment, then really the sky is the limit. So sorry to rush you. I just want to see if I did exactly 10 minutes, and I'm pleased about that. And I'm sure there will be questions later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Harriet, for this interesting initiative. You have touched upon very interesting points as well, like the transmission of plant knowledge and also gender practices in Kenya. And also we are seeing the flows of cultural values from the local to the more global, and the economic value of heritage. And it's also very interesting to see some restrictions and how you are able to integrate all of these into the production of these plant-based products. We will have space for some comments and questions. I think we have reached the end of the first block of presentations. And I think we could invite the 3 first presenters, Barbara, Syrine, and also Harriet, to open their microphones and also perhaps the cameras, so we can answer some questions that the public, the audience may have for us. Are there any questions in the chat box, perhaps? Let's see.
I have a question.
There is a question. Okay, thank you.
The question by Jason, do you want maybe to come a bit closer?
Yeah, quick question. It's just going back, and you'll have to forgive me, I forgot her name, but the woman who was speaking about the MRAMP stakeholder interview commentary results database. Barbara, yes, thank you. Is there a way to access that? I couldn't really see the document itself or what it looked like, but I'm really intrigued by it.
This is a proprietary software system that was specifically designed for this project and the stakeholders. And it was something that one of the other things, besides myself being a independent researcher, is I also am a part owner of a software company. So that just made sense to be able to, if I'm going to do research, what is a really great way, a tool to use for collecting all this data, so that you don't require someone to go in and read all these, thousands of transcripts, it's just crazy. So I thought this was a quick way to do that. But if you leave me your email address, what I can do is give you a demonstration for it and just get feedback. Because if you find that, if the public, like researchers, find this as a valuable tool, then maybe this is something that we could offer to other researchers to be able to streamline their qualitative research.
Thank you, thank you. It doesn't hurt to ask, does it?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for the question. Okay, do we have any other question?
I have a question for Syrine. I didn't get how exactly you collected the text, the testimonials, let's say, from the responses from your sample. Was that in writing, or was it through oral interviews, maybe, that you then transcribed to text in order to put it in the NLP? And if it was in writing, did you somehow accommodate for some sort of bias, so that there would be people who did not have much access to respond to these questions in, I don't know, online or wherever you organized your questionnaires in?
Okay, thank you for the question. So I did a field survey with papers. It wasn't online. So I was on field, and I was asking people, and I have the paper with me, and I write down their answers. After that, I put it in Excel format, CSV format, etc. But it was originally from paper format on field. So it was direct interaction with the interviewers.
Okay, that was my question, actually, because I didn't understand how exactly you did it, and if it was somehow inclusive for people who are not perhaps very literate, or computer literate, let's put it that way. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Syrine, for the answer, and also Aris for the question. Perhaps we have more questions from the audience in the chat box. Not yet. Just to mention that you can also raise your hand to directly open your microphone and ask a question to any of the speakers. Yeah, perhaps I can use my privilege as moderator to ask a question now. I have a question for Syrine. I think your presentation was very interesting. Did you find any challenge in perhaps trying to interpret emotionally charged or very culturally specific terms from the community inputs in your research?
If I understand well your question, the responses were in the Tunisian language, native language, and I had to translate it to French to process it since my PhD is in French. I had some problems with the local words. First of all, I tried to apply the standard NLP pre-processing as it is, which does the lemmatization, stop words, etc. And in this process, it didn't get the local words, so I lost some of the meaning of the words. So I had to remove some pre-processing steps and personalize it a bit to my corpus or my text data, if I'm answering your question right.
Yeah, precisely that, because if you're working with a software, perhaps it's not necessarily getting the exact meaning or these culturally or emotionally charged terms that people share in their interviews. So that was my question.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
was working
Syrine.
with thank you. I was working with a Python programming language, not the software, which makes it easier. I have the hand to change the scripts and the codes. That's more flexible than the classic software.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think we have a question in the chat box. Let me read it. How can you engage community to buy your herbal product? How do you produce those products based on Kenya cultural heritage for better cultural conservation and naturality? And this question goes for Harriet.
Yes. Okay, well, the community are already using traditional medicine. So here in Kenya, and I think most of Africa, I'd say 70% of people in the rural areas are actually using their traditional medicine. It's the first point of call for them. So this is actually, these formulations are actually derived from old ancient formulas. And what we do is we create our own, and then we create a utility model around the formula. But at the same time, we're not allowed to refuse the community from creating their own formulations or using existing formulations. And over here, the intellectual property law is quite interesting because, you know, there is actually you cannot own the tree, and we don't know who came first, the community or the tree. So for us, and all we are doing is processing and modernizing and branding for an urban African and diaspora market. So the community themselves will use the herbs the way they are in their local setting, or they will buy from us because we have retail outlets all over the country. Remember, I said we have 15 outlets, including even where we source from, which is Kericho and Eldoret and Nakuru. And we use 34 Healthy You locations to reach everybody else in Kenya. So then in addition, somebody said about now the formulation is how we maintain the cultural preservation. The work with the community is done exactly the way they used to do it. We don't actually change the processing, except we sanitize it. We purify the water, and then we bottle it and standardize it. So this is aimed at the ones who are skeptics, the people, you know, who are in Nairobi saying, oh, I can only use something that looks like a pharmaceutical product. Or somebody in Healthy You who says, well, what I'm used to is product being presented to me in this specific way. Another way we maintain cultural heritage is maintaining the names, because that's quite important, and also telling stories around how these products are made or where we get the formulations. If you go to our YouTube page or any of our pages, you'll find we have the practitioners actually talking about their process and where they source from and how they work. So for us, this has been critical. We are still a cultural heritage company. You know, we've not completely moved away from where we were. Even the fact that we produce in Kenya and engage local communities is part of that. Hope that answers your question.
I think that question came from Felician. So
yes.
Yeah.
Claudia,
I don't know if Felician. Yeah.
I have more question. If Felician is happy, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah. Please.
So I think this is, I mean, your program at the Catholic University is very interesting, and I think it's very much in tune with what's happening in universities right now, all over the world. That there's this need to break out of the ivory tower and go towards the community, and I see this as a transformation that happens in universities, because university research especially is becoming more and more irrelevant, some people feel, to the real people in the real world out there. So I was thinking, are there perhaps any ways? Of course, I was always thinking how, I mean, bureaucratically, how can you organize a course like this in terms of all the audit cultures that exist in universities, that you have to mark and you have to show some sort of product in the end, and all this. But the main question is whether you have any plans to engage the community more in the course itself. So whether you are thinking maybe members of the community could be some sort of instructors in this field work that you're doing in part of as part of your course.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for the question, Aris. I think the development of the course was truly benefited by the fact that the university was proposing a new educational model from 2023. So there they are trying to foster the skills of critical thinking, citizen responsibility, environmental sustainability, and so on. So we actually try to connect the goals of the course as to respond to this new educational model. And of course, from the very interest of the archaeology program in the university, we've been always trying to create new ways of engagement with cultural heritage, and also finding some relevance as well for archaeology, because it's true that the courses and the discipline of humanities and social sciences is losing importance, or at least it's becoming harder to us to explain to students why it's important to research the ancient past, or to try to do qualitative research, or to try to understand the importance of heritage. So that actually gave us a good reason to try to outline this course in terms of, well, it has a social impact, and we are trying to develop different skills for students. And regarding the second point of the question, we are actually trying to work closer with some local communities. For example, in the case of the Shell Midden in the south area of Lima, we have a close relationship with the district municipality. And actually, whenever we have a field visit, our class, or let's say our guided tour, is not necessarily made by me, but also by a representative of the municipality or some local people that actually explain to us their expectations about the recovery of local heritage. And also, when we visit another archaeological site that is in the middle valley of Lima, and this site actually from the state policy has been working through a participatory approach, and there we actually see local members working as guides, as tour guides. And whenever we visit the site, we always talk to them and let them actually guide us through the site. It's not like as the teacher of the course, I am leading the discussion or having control over the situation when we are having the tour. It's just that we make it more collaborative or co-creative during the field visit. But definitely there are more stages that we hope to develop in the future, perhaps trying to incorporate more the local views, and to kind of dissenter from the academic discourse, because still it's an academic setting, and we have to evaluate and we have to respond to some indicators of the academic unit. But definitely we are working towards that, to trying to have more collaborations and how to say, to incorporate the local views in the course, definitely. Thank you.
Maybe we should move on because there's a...
The time, yes. Thank you very much for all the questions and also the comments by the speakers. And now I think it's time to begin with the second block of presentations in our conference. So now we would like to invite Vitalice Ochieng, who is Senior Program Manager from the organization Trust for Indigenous Culture and Health. Vitalice, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Claudia. Let me share my screen. I hope you can be able to see it.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm very happy to be making this presentation today, and also very glad that already part of what I was planning to talk about, Chebet has spoken about from Harriet Botanicals. And as you can see from the front page, I even have a photo of some community members in what we call medicinal plants garden. This is sort of traditional medicine museum or library. So my presentation is going to be speaking about how communities can take a center stage in conserving heritage, and why it is very important for us to encourage community participation. All right, so I think I will not speak so much about this introduction. Definitely getting to understand that many of us already know about this intangible and tangible cultural heritage. So I'll just basically go to what we do at TICA. Much of the work that we do at TICA is basically to work closely. We work closely with communities to safeguard heritage. And on your screen, you can see some of the areas in which we do this. And basically, we are talking about intangible cultural elements like indigenous knowledge. We are talking about practices on the understanding that heritage cannot exist without the community. It is the community that plays a center stage. It is the community's definition or value that gives meaning to heritage. And so there is no possibility of being able to conserve that heritage if the community are not involved. And as I've mentioned, that one of the areas in which we do this, we work on promoting and working with communities to support the transmission of indigenous knowledge on traditional medicine. And while doing this, we create opportunities for community members to be able to share this knowledge. And this happens like you have seen in the image on the front page, where we have these medicinal plants with tags, and communities gather to be able to have this discussion. This is one way in which we encourage the transmission of this knowledge. And for even communities to enjoy and celebrate their indigenous knowledge of medicine by using it, they need to work in an environment that is supportive. And that we do closely with the Ministry of Health and the Department of Culture to create a policy and legal framework that supports the expansion of traditional medicine in Kenya. The second area where we promote indigenous knowledge and also support communities' cultural heritage is in the space of environmental conservation. And this is the one that I'll be talking about in finer details shortly. But this is where communities actually demonstrate that by using or by practicing their own cultural heritage, they can be able to conserve their environment and also be able to use that as an opportunity to celebrate their own heritage. We also work in the area of climate change. And here we are talking about, again, using the community's indigenous knowledge to create climate solutions. We cannot assume that our communities don't have the knowledge in terms of how to adapt to the changes in climate and even some of the mitigation measures that they need to be able to practice. And this also liaises with the issue of food security, food waste, how communities practice and also carry out their own food system. Let me go straight to the project I wanted to talk about. And these are the projects we worked closely with the Heritage Management Organization on. On the left, you can see that is a photo of Kaya Forest, which is a forest that extends along the coastal region of Kenya. The community that lives around this area have taken care of this natural heritage, basically by practicing their own cultural heritage. What that means is that some parts of that forest, which were inhabited by the ancestors of those who live there today, actually hold very spiritual and sacred spaces. And just by honoring those practices and belief systems, they are able to respect some of the areas or the spaces inside that forest. That naturally prevents people from invading the forest and cutting down the trees. The communities have attached meaning to that ecosystem. And so these are demonstrations that basically by supporting the community's cultural heritage, especially where those practices or the heritage is linked to the environment, it is possible for them to take care of that environment. But then the reason why we had this project is because this is becoming threatened by various factors that are now allowing individuals to get into these forests and begin cutting down the trees. And looking at the causes of this, you realize that some of the people who get into these forests are deviating from their own cultural heritage. They no longer think that their own Mijikenda cultural heritage is important to them today. They think that the world is now modern. People have moved away from their own cultural systems. People have become urbanites. And so they don't think these things hold any value. And it is for that reason that they find it easy to go into the forest to begin cutting them down. So what this project was about is that we were working with the community closely, the Rabbi community. And what we were doing was mainly to be able to support this community to carry out their own initiatives because they know the solution. They know where the challenge is and the solution to those challenges. And some of the activities that they were carrying out were mainly doing the reforestation, of course, to replace some of the trees that may have dried out or may have been cut down, and also literally protect the forest from invaders or people who go into the forest to cut down trees, and also plant, grow nurseries to replace the trees that have been cut. But at the same time, we were working with the community to be able to promote their own cultural heritage, the heritage that is getting eroded because as you can see on this image on the left, this is during one of the cultural ceremonies where they were demonstrating their traditional wedding. And this is something that if you go to, this space is called Cultural Village, the Rabbi Cultural Village. It is situated inside the forest. And if you go into this space, they are able to play out all these cultural practices for you to be able to appreciate the richness in that heritage. And so what we were doing was basically to also support that and bridge the gap between the elders and the youth, so that more young people are involved in these cultural practices, so that then they don't think that the heritage belongs to old people and not for the entire community. So, as I've mentioned, that much of what we were doing in this project is basically to promote or support community agency. Agency here simply means that the community is able to understand what they need to do and be able to take action to do it. And so for us to be able to do that, we also build the capacity of the community by letting them understand, even for the young people who may not appreciate their cultural heritage, so that they are able to understand and also ask questions. If they are in doubt, they can be able to ask questions to the elders to be able to explain to them what some of those practices mean. And we also appreciate the fact that you cannot have a sustainable initiative if the community does not take a center stage. You will also realize that this forest, by the way, is not gazetted as such, so that it's not protected by the government. It is identified as one of those national assets that are taken care of by the community simply by being who they are. And now, to support some of the cultural practices or their cultural heritage, we also worked with them on their annual cultural festival, as you can see on one of the images. This is basically like the 2024 cultural festival, during which they showcase the richness in the Mijikenda cultural heritage. They showcase their foodways, their traditional food, their traditional dances, the costumes, and so on and so forth. Now, something came up during this project, which is about cultural tourism. And this is where the community also had initiatives to be able to bring about alternative sources of livelihood. And this is because of the rampant joblessness, so that then, apart from just celebrating their own cultural heritage, they can understand that by celebrating their own heritage, they can be able also to earn a living out of it. And so we were supporting this by improving or strengthening visibility, marketing, and being also able to let them understand that there is a risk if they over-commercialize their own heritage. It may become, it may have some negative impact. So building their capacity to understand a sustainable way of carrying out this cultural tourism. And while we do this, as I mentioned earlier on, we also make sure we are working closely with the local and national government authorities to be able to create policies and laws that can support communities to be able to enjoy their cultural heritage, and also to promote cultural education in institutions for the youth to be able to appreciate their own heritage going forward. So just to close, I will show you some few photos. On the left, that's the community enjoying their annual festival, as you can see on the left. On the right, this is part of the project during which, with the support of Heritage Management Organization and Mellon Foundation, we were able to issue the community with some of the garments they needed to be able to create their traditional attire for the celebration. And on this other one, you can see the nursery at the cultural village. At the center is one of the restaurants. If you go to the cultural village, you'll be able to have your traditional food inside there. And on the right, you can see one of the occasions during which they are hosting some tourists to their cultural village. So this is just a demonstration that the community has got solutions to some of the challenges that they face. The only thing that we need to do is to be able to provide a conducive environment for them to be able to carry out these solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vitalice, for your excellent presentation. I think this is, again, a very interesting initiative on community-centered initiatives, and actually to foster indigenous knowledge and also the community agency in the creation of strategies to address climate emergency, food security, and many other needs that we are able to identify in, yes, environmental conservation as well. And this is actually revealing the vital importance of integrating community voices and community knowledge to frame context-based policies as well. I think we are understanding much better now how this knowledge, and by empowering communities to participate and take part, we can actually frame more context-based strategies and also policies in Kenya, and I think elsewhere, as was also shared by Barbara in her presentation about Jordan. So we will have, again, another space for questions and comments at the end of this blog, Vitalice. So we will ask you to stay with us until the end of this blog. We have one more presentation in this session. So now we will move on to the presentation by Elena-Maria Cautiș.
Yes, that's the correct way to say it. Thank you.
That's the correct one. Okay. Elena-Maria is a PhD candidate in the University of Ferrara. And she will present about heritage in crisis, engaging communities in times of uncertainty. Welcome, Elena, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be here because I've actually started, I will present to you some bits from my PhD project, which I have actually started 3-4 years ago. And the summer school was very much the base for starting this research. So it's really, really amazing to be here. And yeah, I will share my screen just a bit. Okay. Yes, I think you can see it, right?
Yes. It's just that
Okay.
it's not, okay, now it's.
So yeah, as Claudia was saying, I will talk to you about heritage in crisis. So I will, I will put you through some anxiety, but then I will come back to this and I will fix it. And I will discuss about, what participatory practices in heritage management might mean today. Because I think that we all agree that we are living through a polycrisis. Where we are witnessing armed conflicts, mass displacements, widening social and economic inequalities, which have been ranked by top top scientists as being the main risks for 2025 and beyond. And accelerating climate breakdown and biodiversity loss, technological acceleration that very much unsettles the what it means to be human, and kind of creates a lot of uncertainty and anxiety around this. And so, I have, looking at all of these, started asking myself, what are all of these a heritage of, actually? And this is something which heritage practice can contribute to very much, because it has been increasingly agreed that this crisis that we are going through is actually a cultural crisis, and mainly a crisis of imagination, meaning that we fail to recognize alternatives to the current system, which is creating this crisis. And heritage very much has to do with this, because by default, heritage can act as a repository, right? As we have seen through the many wonderful presentations today, where multiple alternatives actually can coexist. And we can draw inspiration from there. And through community engagement, through kind of paying attention to marginalized communities and marginalized knowledge and marginalized way of being in the world, we can actually foster and enable heritage in taking its capacity in responding to this crisis. But through the research that I've taken, I have come to the conclusion that engagement and community engagement alone is not really sufficient, because what happens when heritage reproduces, what happens actually when engagement when engagement takes place in context in which heritage reproduces the very inheritances which have produced this crisis, right? So I have kind of, for investigating this, I have kind of tried to move away from conventional understandings, if you want, of heritage, which are, rooted, which are themselves an inheritance of the Venice Charter, with a big emphasis on conservation. And I started exploring all of these approaches, which are people-centered and value-based management, to see what they kind of entail, But I've come to the conclusion that they too are kind of rooted in this conservationist paradigm. So then I tried looking at heritage through a different lens, being understood as, discursive and material process, which comes from the past, present, and the future, and which we select for our present needs, and also based on how we imagine the future. And with heritage, with the selection of heritage being a moment when certain relationships crystallize into recognized value, while others fade from view, but which nevertheless kind of influence the present and the future. So through this view, I started looking at participation as a moment when as something happening when the decision of what heritage is and how it should be managed happens. And for investigating all of these, I looked at 2 case studies. One was a case of participatory heritage-led rural regeneration in Romania, led by a local NGO, which has kind of developed this philosophy in which restored heritage is inserted into this cultural ecotourism ecosystem as a path of local sustainable development. We are talking about rural Romania, so we are talking about high rates of poverty and inequality, historically difficult relations between different ethnicities coexisting there. So a very challenging context, but they have nevertheless kind of managed to engage communities, even marginalized communities, throughout the process of valorizing. But the conclusion that I've had after the fieldwork was that they kind of framed everything within a pre-established narrative of kind of this idyllic rurality and conservation and traditionality, and that this narrative actually amplified these long-standing social hierarchies, deepening community tensions, and ultimately actually leading to the commodification of the landscape and rural life. The second case study that I was looking at was a public archaeology project on a Roman site in Italy, which started actually through a collaborative practice between a grassroots association, archaeologists, local residents, public administration. So it was a highly collaborative action of identifying a site, identifying, the actions that implemented through the project, and throughout the implementation of the project, and from the onset actually of the project, marginalized discourses and materialities were kind of included and considered within the narrative, of presenting the site, of imagining the continuation of the project, but they kind of remained nevertheless in the background of this monumental past, right, of the Roman past. So ultimately, these two kind of failed in, asking which heritage, what heritage is, which past matters more, which past matters less in this discourse. And harder histories were polished over as in the other context as well. So ultimately, this made me to conclude that participatory heritage schemes succeed in valorizing official heritages, but have difficulties in expanding and broadening the boundaries within which heritage is defined and managed. So yeah, just to leave you with some lessons and with some reflections based on these discoveries, I came to the realization that maybe when crafting and imagining participatory practices, we need to ask who or what receives sustained care. Are historically silenced groups finding their knowledge acted upon within that process? Which past is being selected towards heritagization, and what kind of futures does this enable? And ultimately, this leads to, paying more attention to historically marginalized discourses and materialities, maybe building in periodic renegotiation of heritage values and of what heritage is and selection processes, by leaving them open, thus extending the issue of participation to future generations as well. Co-authoring maybe criteria through which heritage is defined and which decides management practices as well. And maybe imagine participatory actions which speak of multi-species history. So, we can break this divide between humans and culture, which is very much at the roots of the crisis that I was talking about. So yeah, if I were to summarize it all, I would say that through the observations that I made based on the case studies, it would be important to build upon the inheritances of the participatory methods already in place, but trying to move on from inviting people to promote heritage which has already been chosen for them, to sharing maybe power to decide what counts as heritage in the first place, and paying attention and creating space for historically marginalized discourses and materialities. And yeah, that was pretty much it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Elena, just on time. Thank you for your presentation. It's been a very interesting critical reflection on heritage and participation as well, because it's showing us that basically community participation per se is not the universal solution for inequalities and all the crises that you have listed that can be reflected actually by heritage itself. But it's about basically how we frame it, for whom, and also how we share power, even in participatory approaches. And that's also something that connects with my PhD research that was focused on the Capajñan project in Peru, that was also trying to develop a participatory policy for heritage management. But at the end, what I found was also very similar, that the dominant narratives are constantly reproduced, but at the same time, if communities also could position their own narratives and values, this was basically not because of the policy, but because of specific actors, site managers, that allow them to speak and to have a more co-creative approach. But then after 10 years, when these managers left the project, apparently all these community-based and bottom-up approaches to heritage narratives as well just dissolved, just showing again that it's also very hard to keep in the bureaucratic system something like a participatory-based heritage management. But we will have perhaps more time for discussion now that we have come to the end of the presentations of the second block, and we will open now the floor for questions or comments from the audience. So Vitalice and Elena, they are also invited to stay with us to answer questions. Okay. Perhaps in the chat box or from the audience in paros. Not yet. There is a question, perhaps. Aris?
Yes, if nobody else wants something. It's a question for Vitalice. It's coming from our local context in Greece, where I think that locally and regionally, people have started feeling the impact of climate change. And I think it's the affective result that it produces is a sense of desperation, maybe, and disappointment, because people feel that it is not something that they can act on locally. So, you know, the general discourse, and of course this is in many ways true, is that climate change is something that does not happen locally. It's a global phenomenon. So people, I think, feel that they are sort of powerless against this, you know, change. And I think the public discourse in Greece is very much a disappointed discourse that, you know, this has happened by some powerful people somewhere else, and we are not able to do anything about it. So I was wondering whether you have seen something like this in your case, and whether people do feel optimistic somehow that local practices can at least stop this even temporarily, or you know, slow this down, or whether local practices actually do have an impact on you know, on climate change, in the positive impact, I mean, in your area. That's more or less the question.
All right. Thank you so much. I think the question of climate change, from our context, has got two dimensions. One is the justice behind it. We call it climate justice. And this is more or less like what you are saying, that the main or major contributors to the climate change are actually not where we are in. The communities, local communities, and indigenous people that we work with did not contribute that much to the change that they are experiencing. But the effects of climate change is experienced more by these same communities who never contributed significantly to that change. So for us, the discussion is about where is the justice? And then there is the question of the mitigation or the adaptive measures that have been proposed. What role can our communities play? There's where we come in and say, well, our communities, indigenous people, local communities have lived in a very harmonious way with the environment. And as I even explained in that other project, they are just by living their own lifestyle or their own, celebrating their own cultural heritage, they contribute to the conservation of the environment. And these are some of the things that we are talking about, even mitigation. And so if already this is happening because some people elsewhere contributed to the change, where is the justice? Do they need the compensation? And the other thing is that climate change has been happening for many years. And some of these communities already, through their own adaptation, they have adapted in a way that they have used their own indigenous knowledge in terms of how to adapt to the changes. We have local communities, for instance, that will tell you they have been pastoralists for a long time. And the way they took care of their grazing fields so that they make sure they don't use them, so that they make sure they use them in a sustainable manner. For them, they didn't know it was one way of adapting to the climate change. But then when we come to climate solutions, where is the space for these local and indigenous populations in contributing to the solutions that are being proposed globally? So that is where we hold this conversation, where these local and indigenous people, they have got indigenous knowledge that can also contribute to solutions in the whole world. And number two, they are gravely affected by a change that they did not contribute so much to, and so their rights have to be respected.
Thank you very much for the answer, Vitalice, and also Aris for the question. Do we have any additional?
You're welcome.
Any additional comments or questions for Elena or for Vitalice?
Okay. Jason is just saying that Elena's work was fantastic, which I second, and he'd like to keep up more with her work. So maybe we could pass on Elena's email to Jason to write in a more analytical way.
Of course, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I have a question for Elena. You mentioned about this project of rural regeneration in Romania, right? And I was wondering by whom or which institution was behind this project, the local government or the state?
So, no. So there's this local NGO which has been active in the region for many years now, for 20 years, and has been implementing this model in many villages, actually. I was only researching one of the villages where they are implementing the project, which is kind of foreseen to reach some targets of the same as the village where they started. And the village where they started implementing this model has been recognized by the Faro network, for example, for the work that the NGO has been performing there. So I was interested in in how they've transferred the model into this village, and how they view everything there. But I mean, it's an NGO with also, the collaboration sometimes of public administration, of international actors as well. The funding that they apply for is both national and international. So also, there are many actors, kind of involved in the process.
Right. Thank you very much. Just to complete the picture of how the policy was framed in that context is very interesting. Thank you, Elena. Okay, so do we have any additional question from the audience in Zoom or there in Paros?
No, we're good here. And we have to slowly begin preparing for our presentations as well, our final presentations. So I think it might be a good opportunity to start wrapping this conference up.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I think it's been a great exchange of ideas and also really interesting contributions from different regions and from different approaches as well. I don't know if we will like to perhaps give some closing remarks. I can just give a few comments, I think, as a general reflection from the session and the 2 blocks of presentation, because it's been very thought-provoking today. And I think there is at least a unifying thread that clearly emerges from all of this discussion, and is actually the value of community-centered approaches in cultural heritage, both research, management, and policy making. And we are able to use very innovative methods, digital technologies, and also to bridge knowledge gaps, or even to try to foster grassroots engagement with local traditions, just to show that heritage is actually nurtured by different communities. And in the sense, we enable this interaction with their needs, heritage is also become more meaningful. So I think the session is really reminding us that in times of crisis, as was mentioned by Elena, whether environmental, as was highlighted by Vitalice, or political or social, community engagement is not optional. It's really becoming urgent, and heritage work in uncertain contexts really needs to be adaptive, needs to be sensitive, and also responsive to the local needs. And together, I think all the presentations is calling us to continue reimagining heritage practices not only as preservation alone, but also as processes of dialogue, reciprocity, and I think also care that is very much necessary in times of crisis. So thank you all for contributing to the discussion and to this encounter. I think it's been very meaningful for us who were able to participate in the summer school and having this transformative experience of learning the importance of community engagement. So I think I also give the floor to Lena and Aris perhaps for some closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia. Aris?
Okay, thank you. Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you. I think the most important lesson of these summer schools are what Claudia just underlined, the importance of care. And that we can also build communities in times of crisis and difficulty that do exchange knowledge, support, information, and ideas about the future. Just to sum it up a little bit, I really liked today's conference because it touched upon many themes that we've been currently thinking of, especially in this climate of crisis and uncertainty, which I think we need to highlight right now. I'm catching on from Vitalice's and Elena's contributions to expand a little bit on this. That we've been recently been thinking that the very idea of heritage, as it is practiced by basically Eurocentric organizations, is in itself somehow becoming a problematic notion, simply because I think it depends upon this idea, this discourse of endangerment, that communities, people, heritages, stories, even entire populations are at risk. And that goes especially for tangible heritage, but also for intangible heritage as well. But this idea, in a way, I think in the current context, it's also sometimes counterproductive, that we're not looking towards ways, it's stopping us from looking at ways that heritage can give us new ideas about the future. It sort of freezes things in a preservation idea that we should preserve things as they happened in the past, to be on the right side of heritage management. Our experience, both me and Lena's, from Africa, sort of highlights this in even starker terms, because we realized that the emphasis, the great emphasis on community, that is nowadays ubiquitous in most institutional accounts of what is heritage preservation, has this very European, Eurocentric, Western-centric, first world, let's put it that way, centric, developed North-centric tint, simply because we have lost this sense of community in the North, in the developed North. And our experience from Africa is a context and a process where communities are still very important and very active in the way things happen. So I think one of the main things that we should get is that we should learn from what is derogatorily called recently underdeveloped or third world countries, because they have a lot to teach us, especially in what concerns using heritage or employing heritage or mobilizing heritage as a way to look towards the future. And I think that's very important to underline right now, that a sort of humility that comes from understanding that we have done everything wrong, and maybe we should look elsewhere to get ideas about how we can make things right again. And I think communities in this respect are important. Community work in this respect is important because it sort of gives us that humility, intellectual, epistemological, but also humility in practice with communities. So thank you all very much for joining us. I think I hope we're all on the same page on this thing, and at least I think the summer school has always tried to be moving in that direction. And I hope you also felt that, all of you who have participated in this, 10-year institution. Okay. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful. And I hope we will meet soon again, online or in person, and continue this great work.
Thank you, everyone. It
Thank
was
you very much.
great to see you all and reconnect. And we really hope that this will not be the last time. Let's continue to find meaningful and creative ways to stay in touch, okay?
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Athena.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
very much, and
Bye.
good luck there, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia.
Stay safe. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so